Hello Army, welcome back to my channel. Okay, I need to ask you something before we start today. Do you remember where you were when Golden dropped? Do you remember November 3rd, 2023? Do you remember the feeling of hearing standing next to you for the first time, of watching the music video and realizing that something genuinely special had just arrived in the world? Do you remember the way 7 had already been playing on repeat for months and then suddenly there was an entire album to go along with it, a full body of work, Jungkook's first ever solo album, every track a different flavor of who he is as an artist? I remember. Army remembers. And apparently, so does the rest of the world, because more than 2 years after Golden first landed, it is still doing things that no album by an Asian solo artist has ever done before. And this week, it did 2 of those things at the exact same time. So today we are talking about Golden. We are talking about 7 billion streams. We are talking about a gold certification from the United Kingdom. And we are talking about what it means when a single album rewrites the record books not once, not twice, but over and over again across multiple years and multiple continents. Get comfortable, because this is a big one. But before we get into it, if you are new here, welcome to the channel. We cover everything BTS, everything Jungkook, every milestone, and every moment that proves why this fandom exists and why it is not going anywhere anytime soon. Subscribe, hit that notification bell, and let us get into the most recent chapter of what is already one of the most remarkable stories in modern music history. So let us start at the very beginning, because Golden's journey to this moment is a story worth telling properly, not just as a collection of numbers and chart positions, but as a narrative about what can happen when genuine artistry meets a genuinely devoted global audience. Golden is the debut studio album by Jungkook of BTS, released on November 3, 2023 through Big Hit Music. Primarily a pop record performed entirely in English, it received generally favorable reviews from critics upon its release. And that critical reception, while positive, honestly undersold what was about to happen. Because the critical conversation around Golden focused on individual songs, on production choices, on how it compared to other pop albums of that era. What the critics could not have predicted, what nobody could have predicted, was the staying power. The way this album would not just debut strongly and fade the way most albums do, but would instead keep climbing, keep accumulating, keep breaking new ground month after month, quarter after quarter, year after year. Golden debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200, the main American album chart, and remained on the chart for 25 weeks, the first time an Asian solo artist had achieved that length of stay. Think about what that means in practical terms. 25 weeks. More than 6 months on the Billboard 200. In a music industry where most albums fall off major charts within the first 4 to 6 weeks of release, Golden was still charting after half a year. Still being discovered by new listeners. Still generating streams and sales and engagement at a level that the chart compilers simply had no precedent for from an Asian solo act. The album also spent 8 weeks on the UK's official Top 100 Albums chart, the first time a K-pop soloist had achieved that feat, and the UK entry is important here, because the United Kingdom is one of the most competitive and culturally influential music markets in the world. British music charts have been a barometer of global taste for decades. Getting onto the UK official albums chart at all as a K-pop solo artist was a barrier that had never been crossed before Jungkook crossed it. And then he stayed there for 8 weeks. 8 consecutive weeks of British listeners choosing Golden as one of the albums worth their attention, worth their streams, worth their money. Now let us talk about Spotify, because the streaming numbers are where Golden's story becomes almost impossible to fully comprehend. Golden has now amassed 6.8 billion streams on Spotify, reaching that total in the shortest time frame ever recorded for a full-length album by an Asian artist. It stands as the first and only album from an Asian solo artist to achieve this feat on the platform. And with the momentum this album continues to generate, industry observers anticipate that Golden will cross the 7 billion stream mark before the end of 2026, underscoring its sustained popularity more than 2 years after its initial launch. 7 billion. I want you to really sit with that number for a moment. 7 billion individual instances of someone somewhere in the world pressing play on a Jungkook song from Golden. 7 billion moments of connection between one artist and one listener, multiplied across every country, every time zone, every demographic, every language community on Earth. The population of the entire planet is approximately 8 billion people. Golden has been streamed almost as many times as there are human beings alive. That is not a music industry statistic. That is a cultural phenomenon. And within those 7 billion streams, the individual track numbers tell their own extraordinary story. The track 7 surpassed 2.8 billion streams, with Standing Next to You reaching 1.45 billion, 3D reaching 1.12 billion, and Yes or No reaching 340 million. 7 alone, a single song from a single album by a single artist, has been streamed 2.8 billion times. That places it among the most streamed songs in the entire history of the Spotify platform, sitting alongside artists who have had entire careers built on Western mainstream radio support, massive label backing, and decades of cultural presence. Jungkook got there with one song from his debut album. In 2 years. On Spotify's weekly top album global chart, Golden has been charting for an unprecedented 123 weeks, the longest run for any Asian solo artist's album, highlighting its remarkable longevity. 123 weeks on the global weekly chart. That is essentially every single week since the album was released. There has not been a week in more than 2 years where the rest of the world was not listening to Golden enough to keep it on that chart. Let that sink in. Golden was recently featured as the sole K-pop solo project on a prestigious list of the top 20 albums with the most powerful hit songs of the 2020s, securing the 20th position overall. The sole K-pop solo project. In a decade that has seen an explosion of Korean music globally, in a landscape where K-pop acts have been consistently breaking Western chart records and accumulating streaming numbers that would have seemed impossible 10 years ago, Golden is the only solo album from that entire world that made this particular list. The only one. Out of every solo release from every K-pop artist across the entire decade so far, Jungkook's debut album is the one that made the cut. And then came April 24, 2026. And everything got even bigger. Jungkook's Golden has been certified gold in the UK for surpassing 100,000 units sold, becoming the first album by a K-pop soloist in history to achieve this feat. Let me explain what this certification means, because I think it is important to understand the weight of it beyond just the headline. The British phonographic industry, known as the BPI, is the UK music industry's trade association, and their certification system is one of the most respected in the world. Albums are certified gold in the UK when they reach 100,000 units sold. 100,000 physical and digital units, counted according to the BPI's rigorous methodology, sold in one of the world's most competitive and discerning music markets. And Golden did it. Not just as a remarkable achievement for a K-pop album. As a first in the entire history of K-pop solo artists in the United Kingdom. Think about the history that precedes this moment. Think about every Korean solo artist who has ever released music. Think about how long the K-pop industry has been producing internationally distributed solo albums. Think about how many artists have tried to crack Western markets, have released English-language projects, have toured Europe, have done press in London and performed at British festivals. And in all of that history, across all of those artists and all of those releases in all of those years, not a single K-pop solo album had ever reached gold certification in the United Kingdom. Until Golden. Until Jungkook. The gold certification was confirmed on April 24, 2026, announced officially and celebrated across BTS fan communities worldwide. And the timing of this announcement, coming in the same period when Golden is approaching 7 billion streams on Spotify, felt like the universe itself was making a point. As if the numbers needed to line up from two different directions simultaneously just to make sure the world understood the full scale of what this album has accomplished. Now I want to step back from the statistics for a moment, because I think sometimes when we talk about streaming records and chart certifications and milestone numbers, we can lose sight of what those numbers actually represent. Every single one of those 6.8 billion streams on Spotify is a person. A real person, in a real place, having a real experience with Jungkook's music. Someone who heard 7 on a playlist and immediately replayed it. Someone who was going through a difficult time and found Standing Next to You at exactly the right moment. Someone who had never heard of BTS or K-pop before and found themselves completely captivated by a voice they could not explain. Someone who put on Golden during a road trip and sang every word by the end. Someone whose day was made slightly better because of a song on this album. Multiply that by 6.8 billion and you start to understand what Jungkook actually built with Golden. And the UK Gold certification is the same story told through a different metric. 100,000 people in the United Kingdom chose to spend their money on this album. In a streaming era where music is essentially free at the point of consumption, 100,000 British listeners decided that Golden was worth purchasing. Worth owning. Worth having as something permanent and real in their music library. That is not passive engagement. That is active, intentional love for an artist and his work. The journey from debut album to gold certification is rarely this linear or this consistent. Most albums experience a massive initial burst of attention and then a steep decline as new releases capture the cultural conversation. Golden defied that pattern completely. It declined after its debut week the way all albums do, and then it just kept going. And going. And going. Accumulating streams in the way that only genuinely beloved music does, the kind that gets added to workout playlists and study playlists and sleep playlists and heartbreak playlists and celebration playlists, the kind that finds its way into the soundtrack of people's actual lives rather than just their listening sessions. Beyond the album's numbers, Jungkook's overall solo streaming total has now surpassed 10.5 billion on Spotify, making him the first K-pop solo artist to reach that milestone. 10 billion streams as a solo artist. Not as a member of BTS, whose group catalog represents its own separate mountain of streaming achievement. As a solo performer, with songs credited specifically to Jungkook, he has been streamed more than 10 billion times. That number places him in a category of global streaming dominance that very few artists anywhere in the world have achieved, and he did it while spending 18 months in mandatory military service during which he released no new music whatsoever. That last detail is worth emphasizing. The 18 months of Jungkook's military service were 18 months when he was completely unable to actively promote, release new content, do interviews, make appearances, or generate any of the things that typically drive streaming growth. And Golden kept accumulating. The music was doing the work entirely on its own, connecting with new listeners organically, being discovered and shared and recommended without any promotional machinery behind it. That is the definition of music that lasts. That is the definition of an artist whose work has genuine staying power rather than manufactured momentum. This week, with 2 more historic records locked in, Golden stands as one of the most remarkable debut solo albums in the history of popular music. Not just K-pop history. Not just Asian music history. The history of popular music, full stop. A debut album that debuted at number 2 in America and charted for 6 months. A debut album that spent 8 weeks on the British Albums Chart. A debut album that has been on the Spotify Global Weekly Chart for 123 consecutive weeks. A debut album that just became the first by a K-pop soloist to go gold in the United Kingdom. A debut album approaching 7 billion streams from a single artist on a single platform. The numbers are staggering. The precedents set are real. And Jungkook is currently on tour with BTS across North America, performing to 60,000 people at a time, building on top of everything Golden already established. ARMY has been here for every step of this journey. From the moment 7 first dropped and we knew something special was happening, to the debut week frenzy of Golden's release, to every streaming milestone, every chart update, every certification announcement that has come in the 2.5 years since. We knew. We always knew. And now the entire world's music industry is catching up to what ARMY understood the moment they pressed play on Standing Next to You for the first time. If this video gave you all the feelings you needed today, please give it a thumbs up and make sure you are subscribed because we are going to keep covering every milestone, every record, and every moment from the Ararang World Tour and beyond. Drop a comment and tell me which Golden track means the most to you personally. Which song lives on your most listened playlist? Which one you would play for someone who had never heard Jungkook before? I want to know everything. This community makes every video worth making. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one, and as always, Purple You. Purple Heart.